Welcome to the next episode of FeltovichFit, myofascial release or MFR. If you don't want to hear me talk and you just want to start training, that's fine. Feel free to skip to the time below. Myofascial release or MFR is one of the most widely practiced, yet least understood trends in the modern fitness industry. Today I'll explain what it is and how to do it, and I'll also dispel some of the myths. First, what is fascia and what is myofascial release? Fascia is simply connective tissue. It exists all around your body, especially between and around your muscles. It ranges in consistency from fuzzy and gummy to very dense and fibrous. Myofascial release is the practice of applying pressure to specific muscles for the purpose of relieving tension, especially at points that are excessively tense, sometimes referred to as trigger points. You'll sometimes hear the technique referred to as foam rolling because a foam roller is the most common implement used for MFR. I personally don't like the term foam rolling because it confuses the tool with the technique. A foam roller isn't the only implement that you can use, and depending on what you're trying to accomplish, it's often not the best tool. In the accompanying PDF to this video, I explain some of the theories for why MFR works, so I won't get into it here. The muscles I target in this video are the ones where most people have issues, including myself. And not surprisingly, they're the areas that are most adversely affected by excessive sitting and poor posture: groin, hip flexors, pecs, etc. However, you're free to use the technique on any muscle that you feel needs it. My only two words of caution are: 1, avoid excessive MFR before strength, speed, and power work, because there's some evidence to suggest that doing MFR immediately before those activities can adversely affect stability and maximal force production. 2, avoid excessive MFR on the lower back for similar reasons. For some muscles, such as those of the lower back, a little bit of tension is actually desirable because that's what allows the muscles to stabilize the spine. And definitely don't roll out the back before attempting to lift anything heavy. When it comes to preventing lower back pain and injuries, core strength and stability is actually far more important than foam rolling and stretching, and core strength and stability will be the topic of my next episode, Core 101, the Stu McGill Big 3. The last thing I'll say about MFR is that it's optional. I put MFR in the feels good is good category. If you try it and don't benefit from it, then maybe it's just not for you. I will, however, say that the people who try it and don't benefit from it are vastly outnumbered by the people who never do it and yet complain about stiff muscles and a limited range of motion. Enough talking, it's time to train. Welcome. Today we're going to go over self-myofascial release. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the different techniques, the muscles I typically target, and how I target them. I'm going to start off with the glutes, so that's basically your butt muscle. And the way I target those is I'm going to figure 4. I'm going to sit on the foam roller and figure 4 an ankle over the knee. Then I'm going to find a spot on the glute that's tight, and I'm going to hang out until it relaxes. If you're like me and you do this type of training consistently, you'll find over time that the muscle stops responding to the foam roller, at which time you have to graduate to a more aggressive mobility device in order to continue to get a stretch. In this case, I'll use the Kiba ball. So a Kiba ball, it's basically a lacrosse-sized ball, except it's purpose designed for this type of activity. The smaller, harder mobility device is going to accomplish a few things. 1, because it's harder, it's going to transfer more force to the muscle, going to give you a more aggressive stretch. Also, because it's smaller, it's going to concentrate the same amount of force on a smaller area. That's also going to give you a more aggressive stretch. And then the last benefit of using the Kiba ball over the foam roller is because it's smaller, it's going to allow you to target specific areas of the muscle. So think of the foam roller kind of like a chisel, and think of the Kiba ball like a scalpel. The next region of the body that I target is going to be the IT band. So you can think of the IT band as that dense fibrous region on the outside and the thigh. It's typically going to need a lot of work. It's like I said, a very dense fibrous region. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the just above the knee, top of the thigh, just outside the leg, and then I'm going to find a spot that's tight, hang out until it relaxes, and then just move up the thigh towards the hip. Typically needs a lot of work just because it is such a dense, fibrous region, but well worth the time. The next region that I'm going to target is going to be the groin. If you're like most people and you sit too much, typically going to have tight groin muscles. The way to target those, you're just going to dangle a butt cheek off the side of the foam roller like so. Figure 4 the outside ankle over the knee. Find a spot that's tight, hang on until it relaxes. Again, I do this type of exercise consistently. So over time, my groin muscles don't respond as well to the foam roller. So I use a softball on top of the yoga block, and same as before, figure 4 the outside ankle over the knee, find a spot that's tight, hang out until it relaxes. The groin muscles, the adductors, adductors, those are the muscles responsible for moving the knee towards the center line, and they typically insert along the thigh, the inside of the thigh like so. So I start off high on the thigh and then just work my way down. So we did high on the thigh last time. Now we're going to pick a spot a little farther down towards the knee. Same as before. Figure 4 the ankle over the knee. Find a spot that's tight, hang out until it relaxes. The last region that I typically target is going to be the hip flexors. So lots of hip flexors. Many of them originate at the upper triangular region of the thigh. So those are the muscles responsible for elevating the knee like so. If you sit too much, like most people, typically going to be very tight, going to need a lot of work. So what I'll do is I'll take the Kiba ball, then I'll just lay down on it like so, find a spot that's tight, hang out until it relaxes. So the top of the thigh, outside of the thigh, like so. After filming the first segment, I decided to come back and film some additional footage for a couple reasons. One is I wanted to get to some body parts that I didn't address in the first segment. And 2, I wanted to get to some modifications for people who maybe have physical limitations, injuries, etc. that prevent them from going on the ground. As far as the modifications for people who can't get to the ground or wish not to go to the ground, pretty much everything that I did in the first segment, you can do standing up. All you have to do is grab an implement. In my case, I'll use the Kiba ball. And you just place the ball at the appropriate height for the body part you're trying to address. So if I want to, for example, target the glutes, glute max, glute med, you're just going to put the implement on the wall, lean against it, and basically like a dog scratching its butt, you're going to find a spot in the muscle that's tight and just hang out until it relaxes, then move on to the next body part. So most of the body parts that I addressed in the first episode can be addressed either through standing or through sitting, which I'll address next. Most, if not all, muscles that we addressed in the first segment can be addressed standing up for those who have mobility, physical limitations that prevent them from going to the ground, or if you'd rather just not go to the ground. One exception is the groin. The groin is hard to address standing. However, it's relatively easy to address while sitting. So to do that, you're going to need a relatively hard chair. It doesn't work well with soft chairs. You're going to need the appropriate implement. In my case, I've chosen the softball. You're just going to position the softball near the top of the leg on the groin muscle. And then same as before, just maneuver, find a spot that's tight, hang out until it relaxes, then move on to the next spot and repeat until you've addressed all the trigger points. Groin muscle, if you sit too much, which applies to most people, it's typically going to be a tight, overactive muscle that's going to need a lot of work. For this last segment, I'm going to show you how to target some of the muscles of the upper body that I typically work on, starting with the pectoralis muscles. The pectoralis muscles, typically tight and overactive because they're in the flexed or contracted position for much of the day for many people. Either they're typing on their keyboard, they're at their steering wheel, they're looking at their dumb phone. Regardless, bad posture can lead to tight, overactive muscles, which is what myofascial release helps address. So you're just going to find a spot along the pectoralis muscle that's tight, overactive. Place the appropriate implement against the wall. In this case, I've got the Kiba ball. And then just rinse, lather, repeat, same thing. Find a spot that's tight, hang out until it relaxes. Another area that needs a lot of work for me and for a lot of people, shoulders. I've had 2 shoulder surgeries now, so a lot of trauma, a lot of scar tissue. Again, place the appropriate implement against the wall, find the spot that's tight, hang out until it relaxes. The last area that I'm going to target is, it's actually a bunch of areas. I call this region right there, I call it Grand Central Station, because there's a lot going on there. Triceps, your back muscles, some of your rotator cuff muscles either insert or originate there. So to target that, I'm gonna grab a softball, place it against the wall, and then again, find a spot that's tight, hang out until it relaxes. This one you can do on the floor too, but if you have physical limitations or would rather just not go to the ground, this is an easy enough one to target standing too. So hopefully that gives you some ideas and some options for targeting the muscles of the upper body. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned something about self-myofascial release. We're just going to conclude by talking briefly about programming. So when you should do this workout, how often, for how long. I typically do some variation of that routine every day. If it's a hard workout day, I'll do a little bit before my strength and power work, and then I'll do more at the conclusion of the workout. You don't want to do too much self-myofascial release or static stretching before strength and power work, because that can diminish your strength and power output. I just do a little bit to help increase my mobility. On my recovery days, I'll typically do more self-myofascial release, and then I'll precede that with the standing dynamic mobility workout, which I did in a different episode, and then I'll typically do some static stretching afterwards. As far as the time goes, it's really a matter of how much your muscle needs. A good default is what I do for the standing dynamic mobility workout, that is 10 seconds rest and then 30 seconds of activity, hitting all the regions that we targeted in today's lesson. Thank you again for joining me today. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comments section. Until next time, stay healthy. God bless.